What do you need to know when looking at a house in Toronto?
In this video, we want to show you the tips and tricks that we as realtors use when we're looking at houses in this city. So even before we get to the subject property, we've done our background research, our homework, and we've looked at things like comparable sales, development opportunity, things like size of the lot, laneway, build potential, and as well as the after rental value, the ARV of the subject property.
Once we get to a neighborhood, we like to look at what are the local amenities? What is the access to transit? What's the feel of the neighborhood?
Is it a family neighborhood? So when we get to the house, we look at the outside of the house. What is the curb appeal? What is the development potential? And what is the construction like?
Is it brick? Is it wood? How big is the lot?
Do we need to repoint the brick? Do we need to redo the roof? How are the windows? Does it have separate hydrometers?
Okay, so today we're in Little Portugal, in a very typical Victorian home that we look at by the hundreds, I think, in Toronto. There's thousands of these Victorians all over the city. And they're great because they give us so many options in terms of investments or for people to live in.
Yeah, so it's a good point. I guess how we look at a house depends on really what you want to do with it.
Exactly.
And this is a great example. You could live in it as a single family with a basement, maybe a laneway, or you could divide it up into 3 units and either rent it or live in one of those units.
Yeah.
Tons of options, right?
Absolutely.
So if you've ever done a showing with us, you know that we actually like to start in the basement. And really that's because before you fall in love with the house, we want to know, is this a good house? And often you can tell that from the basement.
That's where all the problems tend to start.
This basement, it's kind of in that mid-range, right? You could leave it as is, and the debate is always, do you underpin? So underpinning is where you dig down and lower the basement.
Right. The other interesting thing about this house is you've got lower ceiling in one part and a higher ceiling in the other part. So do you underpin the whole thing? Do you underpin part of it? So there's a lot of questions that we think about. The problem with starting underpinning is it's not just underpinning the basement. You start to take out then the washroom, then you can be taking out the kitchen. So one thing leads to another, and it can be very expensive.
But maybe you also need to do it, A, to waterproof, B, if you're gonna add a floor, sometimes you need to add the structure, you need to underpin.
Sometimes it's the best money you can spend.
Yeah.
A lot of basements, if they have been renovated, you don't know what's behind the drywall. So it's actually helpful to be in a basement and peek around and see if we can see what is behind the walls.
And we want to know actually what the walls are made of. So typically in these houses, they call it rubble stone. It's like field stone. Some are brick. Rarely are they concrete or concrete block. So that's another consideration. And it's going to be damp, right? Because water comes through the field stone, it comes through the brick. It's really hard to keep water out of those kind of foundations.
Right. The main thing we look for is high and dry.
Okay, so in this basement actually has a separate entrance, 2 separate entrances, which is great because that saves you A, a lot of time, and B, a lot of money. So going to the city now to try and get a basement on a semi or a row house is near to impossible, and it'll take you probably a year just to get the approvals, and it's another 12 to 15 grand.
Yeah, what you often see in these homes is some combination of electrical systems. This home was built in 1890, so it's gone through a lot of renovations, and in that case also a lot of electrical systems. So there might be a very new part electrical, but there could also be some old knob and tube wiring in the house. So we have to take a look at what exactly is the state of the electrical system in the house.
And then the next thing we look at really is the heating and cooling systems. Hopefully there's coolings. Typically in Toronto, and typically in these houses, you'll find forced air, so you'll be furnace where it blows air through the house. And part of it is just, your consideration of how you want to heat and cool your house and how much that's going to cost, right? And so, the last thing you can really kind of find out in the basement is what is the plumbing like? Is it copper? Oftentimes now they'll do PEX.
Also, where the plumbing stack is impacts what we can do with if we're going to add extra kitchens or extra baths. So where that is in the basement is really crucial to what we can do above.
And really what Jordan's saying is like, you know, if you want to put a kitchen in the front, but the stack is back there, now you're gonna have to like eliminate some headroom because you gotta run plumbing through walls, or, you know, just things that you want to think about when you're considering layout and where things are gonna go. So now that we see in the basement, we can move upstairs and fall in love. Okay, so on the main floor, as investors, you know, we're always kind of looking at how do you divide this up into 3 spaces or more spaces. You know, where could you take out walls? Is there a powder room?
Yeah, is it an easy layout to basically make an apartment if that's what we're going to do?
Yeah.
Most of them are, but sometimes you get a kind of a crazy layout and therefore you can't use it for maybe what we thought we could use it.
Totally.
That immediately maybe goes off the list, or you have to look at maybe another use for the property.
Well, now let's talk about the kitchen too, right? Because, you know, as investors, we know that's where you splash out. Usually the most amount of money is on the kitchen, other than probably the structural piece.
Yeah, let's face it, that's where we all spend most of our time, it seems like.
Yeah,
right?
it's true. So, you know, this house has an updated kitchen. It's not, you know, to maybe sell worthy today.
Yeah.
But it's certainly livable. The good thing is you could move in and live in this house as is right away. But if you wanted to mark your own stamp, the kitchen is probably a place you're going to want to do it.
Absolutely, yeah.
And you know, now that we are in the kitchen too, we're also thinking about access to the backyard, right? Like what a lot of people want to do is put those sliding doors so they can walk right out into the backyard, flip burgers on the barbecue, whatever that is. Right?
Yeah, it's also sliding doors give you light. The one thing about Victorians and a lot of houses in Toronto is access to light. It's a big issue. So by opening up the back, it gives you a lot more light coming in the front and the back. Generally, it is a bit of an issue, especially in wintertime, access to light, and that's why people will put in skylights, for example.
So I guess, you know, now that we looked at the main floor, then we go up to the 3rd floor. Really, and the thing we're looking for here, or the 2nd floor, I guess in this case, the thing we're looking for here is size of bedrooms.
Right.
Do the bedrooms have closets? Is there a different configuration? You know, if you're going to live in it, you know, how many bedrooms do you want, and can you make them bigger or divide it up into more?
Yeah, if it's a separate unit, I find sometimes the 2nd floor tends to be the challenge because it's all bedrooms, so it's a very chopped up apartment if you're going to make it into an apartment. So in some cases, we might want to take out a wall or not, depending upon the layout. So
and oftentimes taking a wall in the middle and putting the kitchen in the middle solves the layout better than putting it on an end.
Yeah.
But again, it comes back to the stack question.
Right. And how much money we're going to put into it and how we're going to prioritize those dollars. So there's a lot of things to think about. Sometimes you get lucky, and in this particular place, on the 2nd floor, they did have a kitchen. So all the plumbing and stacks is actually in what is now the master bedroom, but could be easily converted back.
Ready to go.
Yeah.
You know, and then the next thing to look at really is the bathroom, right? You know, the problem with these older Victorians is they tend to have
Tiny bathrooms.
tiny bathrooms. So, you know, that's a question. Do you, like in my house, we lost a bedroom, we added a big bathroom and created a laundry room.
Yeah.
You know, so that's, you know, something else we're thinking about. And typically that's sort of the second, you know, I guess, foundational structural issues, kitchens, bathrooms. Right?
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah. And then I guess really kind of the last thing, you know, we look at is fit and finish. You know, as realtors and investors, you know, we don't really get too fussed by floors and paint and baseboards because we know you can change that stuff relatively quickly and easily. But it's, you know, it's kind of the last thing we look at.
Generally around here, you're not going to go higher than an IKEA kitchen, for example, to get a return for your dollars. But, you know, in some cases, you might want to go after an executive clientele, and therefore we're going to take it up to the next level.
And the great thing about this neighborhood, now that you mention it too, is you know, your after rental value, there really is no ceiling on it in this neighborhood. You know, you can take this house, spend $1 million, and still sell it for $3+ million. So, you know, it's the kind of neighborhood where you can basically do whatever development you want.
Right. You could take a house that could be under $1.5 million, and if you added the right development into it, it could still sell for $3 million or above.
Yeah,
so there's a lot of possibilities from that perspective. And now we can talk about Paul's favorite topic.
Our favorite topic.
both of our favorite topics. Laneway houses. Now, this particular property is laneway eligible.
Yep.
The question is, how big a laneway can we get out of it?
Exactly.
So we really pay particular attention to how far the garage is from the actual house, and therefore can we go up from one level to 2 levels, and do we have to make any adjustments along the way, because that's where expenses could come in.
And what is the garage made of? What are the current setbacks?
Can we use the original garage?
Exactly, yeah.
I hope you found this video hugely helpful. We wanted to give you a peek behind the curtain of what Paul and I do when we're viewing a house.
Please leave a comment in the comments below. Please like this video if you've liked this video. Please smash that subscribe button so you get updated when we post new content each and every week. Talk soon.